Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome back to High Vibin' It. We are very excited to have you here. We are very excited about our guest today, Miss Melissa. We're already best friends just from talking behind the scenes before
If
we
you're
got
not on the
started on this
Patreon,
podcast.
Get on the Patreon because this conversation before we started recording is pretty awesome.
It was funny. Yeah, so we're really excited to have Melissa joining us today. She is the host of Mind Love podcast, and she's also a mindset coach, which I would say is similar to what Lindsay and I do. So we're all here to help you guys live your best life. And today we're going to dive into some cool topics that hopefully help you to raise your vibration, feel better, have less resistance, just follow your path and do your thing. So Melissa, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. You guys pumped me up before this, so now I'm just ready to go.
We're pumped now. Yes, I'm very excited to have you. The first thing I wanted to touch on was something that you mentioned we could talk about and interview you about, and that is the concept of using limitations as guideposts. Can you explain what this means to you, why it's important to you, how we can do it, and then we'll go from there.
This concept has shown up in my life in extreme ways and also just like everyday ways. And I'll give you a really simple everyday way. We tend to think that we want more choices. Like we go to a restaurant. I remember the first time I started going to fancy restaurants, I'm like, this is bullshit. There's 5 things on the menu. Yeah, they look amazing, but I don't understand half the words. And then you go to Cheesecake Factory and there's like 100 things, right? And they're going around the table and I'm like, just come to me last. I'm all nervous and anxious. By the time they get to me, I order something and then I'm like, I should have got that. And I just have like regret the entire time. And then I went vegan. And there's often one vegan thing on the menu. I now
eat tofu. Oh, not tofu, right? Or tofu's vegan.
Tofu's vegan. Tempeh's vegan. There's lots of different protein options. I now eat eggs also, so I call it vegan, but not the point. And so then all of a sudden at restaurants, I'm like, well, there's the one thing I can eat. Got that. There's like no other thought. I can just be confident, order, actually have conversation at dinner instead of just like mulling over this. So that's a really simple way. But when there's only one option, when somebody, like say you went to a psychic and somebody they're like, you have this one thing that you can be, and then you just like go forth and you're like, there's only this one thing, rather than there's 3 options you can take. Door number 1, 2, and 3. You go through door number 3 and you're just thinking about door number 2 and number 1 the whole time, which means that your energy is like puttering along through door number 3. You're not really even showing the universe that you want door number 3 because part of you, your energy is still over here. And so this, I didn't really realize this actually until I became vegan, even though there had been like 5 other big things in my life that just narrowed down my options. And when that happened, when my options were narrowed down, there was one thing where I really thought my life was ruined. But then that led me down a path of like, well, now all of these options are closed to me. So now I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I've got to do this on my own. And I never looked back at the corporate jobs because there was one thing that funneled me into that, the entrepreneurship. And so, yeah, then my flailing happened between all the avenues that entrepreneurship can happen. And so what I started to do is I started to figure out, instead of having the universe funnel me down, how can I be more intentional about narrowing down my options? How can I understand who I am, what my perfect day looks like, how I like to spend my time, when I'm lit up, all of these different questions you can ask yourself to figure out what's right for you so that you can shut the door to the other things and not leave any of your energy there and just go confidently towards one direction. And even if you could have done door number 2, you could have done number 1. If you just put your energy towards that and see what's in that for you, you will eventually end up in the right place for you. If you stay open, follow the signs, and just go towards it confidently. And a lot of people think they don't have that confidence, but the confidence is something we're born with. Children are the most confident humans ever. Example, if you go into a classroom of like 5-year-olds and you say like, who can play this instrument? You hold up a trumpet, guarantee almost every 5-year-old is going to raise their hand, grab that trumpet and try to blow. If you go to them 10 years later and you say, who can play this? Only the trumpet players are going to raise their hand. And they're probably going to say, I can play, but I'm not that good, And so we learn how to not be confident. And so the whole the whole idea of following that path when you find your little funnel is just to keep reminding yourself what confidence looks like. And even if you feel like you're faking it, you just do the actions, you do the confident actions, you fake it till you make it, until that neural pathway is strong enough that confidence becomes your default as well. So that's what I mean by using your limitations as guideposts towards your next direction.
That's juicy. I'm lit up by this. I don't know about you guys listening, but I'm just like, yes, focus and commit. Use your preferences, use your passions, and then you get to decide intentionally and choose, okay, I'm going to commit to this. And also I can change my mind later. But for now, like, let's just go 100% all in instead of having that split energy, wondering, regretting, just not feeling like you can channel all the energy in that one direction. I think that's really, really powerful.
Well, and when I was first starting my practice, they encourage you, find a niche down, narrow your focus. And I hated that at first because I was in the mode of like, I'm just going to take everybody, anyone. You want to quit smoking? I got you. You want to lose weight? I got you. You want to feel better about yourself? I got you. But I didn't love working with every type of person. I was doing it out of a feeling of necessity and not a real necessity, right? So when I actually did it, one of the ways that helped me was somebody said, don't feel like you have to do this forever. Just find something you're passionate about, stick with it for 6 months. And then if you just commit fully for 6 months, and then if you decide at 6 months that you want to do something else, do it then. But until then, just focus on that. And that really helped me because I didn't feel like I needed to commit forever. Spoiler, I actually loved it and kept doing it. And I think I knew deep down that I was going to, but I just wanted the option to, to back. I wanted to feel like I had control over the situation, which, whatever. But I love that you say that don't be afraid of making the heavy quotes here, wrong choice. Can we talk about that for a minute? Because I think it's something that Kelsey and I want impress upon people a lot, which is just don't be so serious about it. You can always change your mind. If I decided tomorrow that I wanted to, I don't know, own a car wash place, I could do that. I know I could do that. I don't want to, but I could if I wanted. So can we talk about navigating through what we perceive as a wrong choice?
Yeah. So I said earlier how it's really the confidence of whatever choice you pick and that commitment, like you said, of going towards it. Because if you have part of your mind stuck in like, oh, I should have chosen this, or is this even right? I don't know. And like every step you take, because I've been there. So I know the mindset where it's like, then I'm on step 2 and I'm like, I don't really want to do step 2 with this because I kind of think I should have chosen this. Maybe I should go back to step 1 for this and then go to step 2 for this. And whatever it is, your energy is still there. And so you're not like, I am a big, like, put all of your signs towards one thing so that everything knows how to support you. Yep. And so you can look at this the woo-woo way where it's like, oh, let the universe know you picked door 2 so that the universe sends you door 2 stuff. But think about it in the practical way. So somebody who really did niching down and evolving their niche really well is somebody named Angie Lee. She's a pretty big influencer, but she started out, she has a podcast called The Angie Lee Show, and she's a friend of mine. And she started out at just doing emotional eating. And I did not meet her when she did this. So it was actually a surprise to me when I was like, oh, you started your whole business, multi-million-dollar empire as like just emotional eating. And then eventually, like she created a program, she learned how to do sales, and she realized she was great at sales. And so she became a sales expert. Then she ended up starting a CBD line. And now she just announced like last week that she's not doing the business anymore at all. And she's going to go into comedy, and she just goes head first into it. And
that's a hard left right there.
She's been successful at all of them, and all of them seem pretty different, but you can kind of see the path that they took. Mm-hmm. Well, I met her and I was like, you're so good at sales. This seems like your purpose. This seems like what you should have been doing. Interesting that you started over here. But how did she find out she was good at sales? Because she gave the first thing her all. She went in with it, with her all. And then she realized, oh, wow, I'm really good at this part of the business. Do I like doing this more than I like doing this? And so it's this push and pull of like committing with whatever you choose and then evaluating. And so instead of evaluating, like, should I have chosen something different? You ask, what am I learning in this moment? Oh, this is really interesting. And just add the learnings of like, oh, I'm really good at this, or oh, wow, this keeps coming up with clients. Maybe in a future course, it'll be that, but I'm just going to keep a pin in this and maybe ask other questions to other clients about this to see if they're also interested in this. And so you just kind of play with it. It's like an ebb and flow of what does the universe have in this for me? I did this when I even just left my corporate job. So when I was with my corporate job, I was completely I was kind of miserable. My boss was very toxic, and we had like this interesting relationship where we would like party together, and then he was my boss, and then so he would just like scream at me in front of people, and then I'd get off the phone with him and all of a sudden snap at my husband and be like, this is not a good environment for me. And so I started doing all of the self-reflective questioning, self-discovery questions, because I'm like, there's something else that I need to be doing. I would rather be working towards my own dream than somebody else's. And so I started to ask myself the questions like, what does my perfect day look like? What have I done in the past? What have I liked about every single job that I've had? And what have I disliked about it? When do people give me the most compliments? Like just any question to kind of bring up my own strengths or see patterns that maybe I don't see. And one of the really powerful ones that I did was I reached out to 11 different people that knew me from different areas of my life. An old roommate, a current roommate, an old coworker, my husband, my mom, just all sorts of people. And I asked them, I was like, hey, I asked them basically what my superpower was, what they saw in me. And that's a very vulnerable thing to do. It actually took me like a year to be able to commit to this one step. And so I finally ended up saying like, hey, I'm taking this entrepreneurship course. They tasked me to do this. I feel kind of weird about it. So I'm sending it to you in an email. Take your time, just like took the pressure off. And I got back some really interesting responses, and they helped me to see myself in a way and kind of connect things that I wasn't connecting because I was just living my life in my regular patterns. And so when I got to see these different things, I knew what side hustle I wanted to start. And podcasting came up because I could always talk myself out of being on video. I get in my head too much when I write. So talking was something fun. I wanted to have a reason to reach out to different people that inspired me. I read a lot of books anyways. And so I decided to start a podcast. And when I went in on that, it was just my side hustle because I wanted something to light me up, but I was too afraid to let go of these cords over here. Well, at the same time, instead of going to my day job and being like, ugh, and just feeling my energy drain like I did every single day, just starting this side hobby that I didn't know I was going to make money from yet, I was able to be like, wait, say this was going to be my full-time gig in a few months from now. What do I need to know? What resources do I have in my current job that I could play around with? And so some of those things were I was sending out the emails, I was doing the content marketing. And so I was able to use the big budget from that company to test little ideas and then apply them over here. And so when you start getting clear and just like, even if you're not ready to let go of this other thing like that, I think a lot of people are like, just quit your job and start your hustle. And then they go into entrepreneurship, they're discouraged and like, oh my God, I'm never doing that again. But you can start slowly. I know it's not the most glamorous way to introduce it, but it's also the most accessible way. And when you do that and you're like, okay, I'm putting more and more energy here, and you're just kind of drawing the abacus beads from one side to the other to the energy over here, then you start to see things in a way like that's part of the thing about committing is like you commit to this and it's like when you start doing gratitude journals and you're like, okay, well, I'm committing to finding things I'm grateful for at the end of each day. And then at 2 p.m., you start to see things that you're grateful for, and things that you're grateful for start to be highlighted in your life because you've chosen this. And so same with actually choosing something that you're going to be working on, even if it's just that 6-month plan, even if it's just a side hobby, you start to see like, oh, well, now this friend over here might have a connection for me that helps with this. Now my current job might have these resources that will help with this. And you just start to allow the light to be shined onto things that will move you towards that goal. And so it doesn't matter which thing you pick, because if you're actually open to learning how to craft the most beautiful life for you rather than let me pick the next thing that's going to make me the most money. But no, I just need to keep learning about myself through every role that I do, ask what's in this for me, trust that my inner wisdom will guide me. And eventually it's kind of like if there's 3 paths through the forest and they all go like this and come out the same end, just trust that you will come out on the end.
Yeah.
Maybe not in your time, in the universe's time or God's time, or however you look at that. But you will end up there. You just have to be open to finding the joy in that current role and continue to ask yourself questions so that you're actually moving instead of just staying there, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That was good. I love your personal example because it shows like the gentle way that you can do it, because like how you explained,
Yeah.
a lot of people teach like, oh, go all in, like quit your job, like become an entrepreneur, like commit. And like, that's not necessarily what we mean by commit. It might be the most empowering thing for someone out there listening to do, but for most people, probably a more gentle approach, a more self-loving approach would be like, commit to what you want to do, but like you don't have to do it all in one day. You can move the beads over one at a time. Like how you said, you can just start. You can still have your job that you might not like for now to pay the bills, so you're not stressed, so you're not putting pressure on yourself to be successful at this new thing right away overnight, because that might not be the self-loving thing to do, is like be so hardcore about it. So I'm glad that you made that distinction and have that experience to tell everyone about, because there is definitely a gentle and supportive way you can do this for yourself, where you're committing, but you're transitioning in a progressive way.
I think it is that's exactly what I did when I was working for the institute that I studied hypnotherapy. 4 years later, something like that, I was like, at the point when it started to kind of overtake my personal practice, I was working there more than I was investing in my business. My husband said, they're basically paying you to not work on your business. You know that. And I was like, oh, you're very smart.
Never thought about it like that.
When he said it like that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so easy. It's such an easy decision now. And I think that, listen, podcast listeners, lovely high vibinant listeners, we don't know what you should do. However, you do. So if your soul is nudging you and is like, you need to commit, you need to quit, it's toxic, quit, then listen. But if it's saying, maybe don't quit yet, maybe do the nurturing thing and learn what you can from it. I love that example, Melissa, because so many times we're just thinking about how we can get away from the situation, that we're not thinking about what we can get from the situation, squeeze every bit of value from that toxic boss or the job or, the big budget, like you said, and use it to your advantage until your voice gets so loud that you can't not listen to, your inner voice. So anyway, good, great job shedding light on that. I think it's very important.
Well, and even how we said you can't pick wrong, the same goes for how you choose to do that journey.
Yes.
You need to quit now because your current situation is messing with your mental health so much and you really can't get yourself to find the good out of it. Somebody else might be in your exact same situation and can find some good, and they can make it less unbearable. And just having that little thing that like, oh, I can't wait to get out of work so I can work a few hours on this, lights them up. Some people, if they go all into the hobby, they're just too stressed and they're going to be doubting themselves the whole time. And so that's why you just ask yourself the questions. You might not even know now. Sit with it for a few weeks. Maybe it's in meditation, maybe it's on a long walk, however you do your inner reflection, and just
it's always in the shower for me. Anybody else get really good inspiration like when they're washing their hair and you're like, oh, interesting. Best idea ever.
Yes, I know. It's always when I'm washing the girl parts.
That's when the inspiration comes.
Feminine energy up. That's that divine feminine right there.
That's great.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my gosh. Anyway, okay. So you can't choose wrong. Any path that you choose, as long as you choose, right? That's the important thing. We need to make the decision for yourself and just put all of your abacus beads towards that decision. And you really, truly can't go wrong because you have your whole self backing you, and then the universe will back you. We're very woo on this show, so I'm going to talk about that all the time.
Okay, good. I am too. I'm like, I don't know how far to tread into the woo. Yeah. I want to dive all in.
All the way.
On that note, so much of this is about, because maybe somebody listening and they're like, okay, I don't get it. You said go all in or don't go all in, and I can't choose wrong. And you said narrow down my options, but now you just gave me all the options. I get it. It can be overwhelming. But I think what this all comes back to is, and I think what really the purpose of life is, what Earth School is for, is to learn how to harness your energy. And so that's what it comes back to. If quitting your job makes your energy go awry and you don't have that kind of energetic control where you can just center back and you're like, everything's going to work out fine, then you need to go the slower way. And you should know that about yourself. You might evolve over time. Now I'm getting to a point where I'm like, God, I feel this nudge and I'm just going to go for it. Before, the nudge had to punch me in the face like 5 years later, I'm like on the ground crying in the fetal position. And the universe is like, we've been telling you what to do for years. Just get up off the floor, And so it's about harnessing your energy. And so the more that you actually listen to that inner guidance, the more guidance you're going to get, the more you're going to trust your own wisdom, the more obstacles you overcome, the more you're going to have that self-belief that I can overcome an obstacle regardless of what comes my way, because it's always going to come my way. And so you're building yourself up. You're building your own trust in yourself, your self-beliefs, through taking the action. And the longer that you sit in indecision, the more you build the self-belief that you are not a person who takes action on your wisdom. So you'll stop receiving guidance. You won't even know what the guidance sounds like. And so it comes back to that. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed or in disarray or lost, the next action for me is often just sitting there and asking myself the questions like, okay, well, where do I feel out of alignment? What is it? Oh, a morning between 10 and 12. For some reason, I feel super depressed, like everything sucks and I want to die. And so can I do something different from 10 to 12? Me.
There's always a window. That's so funny. What is that?
So that window is my long walks with an audiobook or talking to myself. I use an app called Otter that's like a self-dictation app.
Mine's from like 3 to 4 where I'm just like, what am I doing?
Witching hour. Yes. So have a plan for witching hour.
Oh, I love it.
It's just understanding your patterns and seeing if you can figure out a way to shift your energy during that time so that you stay in that high vibration instead of allowing so many dips. And the dips are normal, but do you have the tools to get out, or do you sit and marinate it in the dip for a while? Because that marination time is going to throw even more stuff off. So for me, it's just been, learning about myself and developing, not staying in the high vibe forever, but developing the tools that are like the rope that pull me out of it. And so now I have a ton of tools I can call on. They're starting to become my default pattern, but then I get back up there and I go confidently towards whatever I chose. So that's my process with it, at least.
My favorite guests are the ones that are like, it's hard, guys. Life is hard, but we're trying to figure it out. And here's what's worked for me. Like, I love that realness and that, like, I think we are very lucky when with a lot of our guests that come on that are like not up here all the time. Like, we really try to teach, like, no one is designed to be up here 24 hours a day. When I'm just putting my hand over my head for listeners, but we're not designed to be that way. We have the ebb and flow. We have the contrast. That's why we're here. But as you so wonderfully put it, you also should be able to have the resources and tools to encourage yourself to a brighter place when you need to. I love the walk with an audiobook idea. That's great. Can you do that now? Is the weather conducive for a long walk with an audiobook outside?
Oh, I have thermal clothing. I need to go on my walks no matter what, because I get seasonal affective depressive disorder, like hardcore. One day inside without going outside and I feel like I'm dying and I'm like crying on the ground. Like, why am I even here? My like, go outside.
It's real, guys. It really is.
Well, and like you said, if anyone's saying that they've found the spot where they're just high vibe the whole time, they're lying to you. Even the Dalai Lama, I was just reading something about how the Dalai Lama works out his anger on the treadmill, which is just a great visual.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Like, does he wear running shorts or his normal get up? Like, I wonder how long his stride is and does it fit in that robe?
Oh my gosh. That's the best image I'm going to have all day. I love that.
I know. He's such a cutie. That'd be epic to see that.
And look, if the Dalai Lama can do it, what are we even waiting for? Kelsey, what are some of your favorite ways to pull yourself into a higher vibe when you need to?
I'm a little bit more like indulgent because I'm like a dramatic feeler. So I'll just let myself go to the very bottom and then I get over it like very quickly. So for example, like if I start feeling a certain kind of way, let's say it's like sad or I feel like a moment of mourning for something or whatever, I will just be like, okay, 5-minute timeout, go to my room, put sad music on, cry. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, I don't feel sad anymore.
Yep.
I just like process things really fast intentionally, and then I just naturally like bob back up to the high vibe. So yeah, I'm just like kind of hardcore in that way, I guess. But sometimes if I'm more in a mood of like, oh, I don't want to go there, I find that I eventually end up there anyway. So I just do it right in the beginning.
Well, that's the
to
thing.
avoid
And
the avoiding.
absolutely. And I think I'm the same way when it comes to that, because when I'm like in that space, I feel like I shouldn't be, right? I forget that I have a choice in the matter. And I just kind of sometimes let myself go like, ugh. And then you're right. I just am like, I'm over this. I'm really over this. What do I want to do instead? And it's easy then. But if I don't, I feel like if I don't go through that process, I'm constantly like, okay, but there's this thing over here. There's this thing over here. There's this thing over here. And I'm not looking at it. But then when I do, I'm like, okay, over it. What can we do now? And then I play video games. I love video games.
Yes,
I love
it's like
video games and TV and like the fantasy escape just for a second. Oh, it's great. So
yeah,
good.
like the self-love and the self-soothing time after the low dip is always nice for coming back to the up moment.
Oh, yes. So
Oh
nice.
yeah, that low dip is so critical though to release
Mhm.
the emotions, because for
Totally.
so many years I thought that I was making myself stronger by overpowering all those things and like just finding a way to distract. And about 10 years, and then what happened is I had to go back and face all the things from 10 years ago when I was finally ready. And there was this whole like process when I was about 27 years old of getting over all these things of when I was 17, because I had never actually
Yeah.
felt the emotions. And this came up when I was pregnant. Actually, I got prenatal depression pretty badly, but this was just my baby's almost 11 months, and so this was last year. And I had this whole beat up moment of like, I should be over this. I'm teaching people how to be happier. And like went in this whole spiral about when it came down to it, when I actually allowed myself to speak everything out loud that I was feeling, because in your head, it feels very valid. If you get it
Right.
out and you talk to a therapist or a partner, or like journal,
Mhm.
I speak to Otter and I'm like, wait, this is coming back to you feeling like for some reason you don't deserve the emotions because you've done all this work on yourself. No, that you everyone deserves to feel these emotions or your trauma or your hurt moving through you. So let them release. Don't try to hold them in, or else they will be knocking at your door later on. And so,
Yeah.
but I know my personality is I liked what you said about setting the timer, because
It's nice to have like a window for it.
yeah, and you know when it's going to end. And so it's a very slippery slope for me of staying in things. And this usually happens if I don't release it with that big dramatic let go. I don't know why that's happening. With that big dramatic let go, then I'll just stay in it, and all of a sudden I'm highlighting all the negative things in my life. But I read about this culture who actually does mourning in a specific way. There's like 3 days of like darkness and crying, and like 2 extra weeks of like, we're still supposed to be sad, and people bring you stuff, and everybody in your life acknowledges this window. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I thought that was so interesting, where it's like, okay, this is the allowed time. And yeah, you might be sad after that, but I remember reading about it and thinking, okay, that could be really not helpful, because what if I'm not over it at the end of that 2 weeks? But what I heard from a lot of people who live in that culture is that having that set time frame gives them a light at the end of the tunnel. It gives them something to kind of work towards. And so then you feel okay. You're not like, oh, I should be out of this already. You commit to the feelings of letting go, and then you commit to the feelings of climbing back into the light. And so it kind of goes back to what we talked about before.
That is
Yeah.
interesting. I feel like in the old times, people had like a mourning period, like wives who were widows had to wear black for a certain amount of time. Queen Victoria never stopped wearing black because she was in mourning until, her dying days. But it was a thing. Like people used to acknowledge these things. Now, I don't know if it was, I think what I'm referring to is when somebody dies or you have like a loss of some kind. But yeah, imagine if we could do that for ourselves. Like I love a good pity party, as long as there's an expiration date. I don't think there's never a good time to like just wallow. Let's be constructive with what we're doing. Let's feel it, heal it, and move the fuck on. Okay. But yeah, love it.
My pulling out techniques are anything that
Hang on.
We all heard it when she said it. Okay.
Oh yeah, I need a new vocabulary. But
Let's hear about your pulling out techniques.
okay,
I can't wait.
My pulling out techniques is just very slowly. Maybe she won't notice. No, no, my getting myself out of my grief techniques and it doesn't even need to be a big thing. Honestly, sometimes the worst times are when I just wake up on a Sunday and I'm like, oh my God, it's gloomy outside and everything's terrible now. So I do anything to shift my energy. And so how do I change my physiology in some way? That can be movement, that can be screaming, although I don't recommend that if you have neighbors.
My 5-year-old and my 3-year-old love that one. That's their favorite.
My neighbor came and was like, are you okay, when I was pregnant? Because I was going, ah!
Oh gosh, you were pregnant too. She's like, oh, call 911.
And I was home alone. And so she like came over and knocked on the door. So
oh
maybe
my goodness.
A text message warning or do it into a pillow.
What did you say to that?
I was honest. I was like, I have a lot of emotions and I just felt like they all needed to come out at once. So I'm going to be doing this for like 4 more minutes. I hope you're cool with that.
And then you should say, I recommend it if you ever need this. Do it.
Don't worry, I'm going to pull out.
Slowly but surely.
And so,
oh God.
Yeah, or like even drinking a large glass of water, or eating a healthy meal, like anything that actually changes the movement of like my cells. Yes. And it just is really, really helpful for me. And that can include something like a matcha latte because that's my go-to drink, or mud water.
Well, pick me up.
So
wait, what is mud water? Do you know what mud water is, Kelsey?
Yes, it's like a coffee alternative, right? Like a healthier adaptogen situation, but it's not
like
actually
a chai
coffee.
Tea mixed with turmeric and cacao. It's really good. I actually just found a recipe to DIY on my own, and now I make like 200 servings at once. I have a whole cabinet dedicated to like DIY.
Can I get that recipe?
I will send it to you.
One of my favorite things to do is, even on a cold day, you can do this depending on where you live. But if you can't go outside and stick your face in the sun, do it from a window. It is, for me, that is the thing, because I don't care what I'm feeling, where I'm at in my emotions. If I put my face in the sun for 30 seconds, I am completely different, because I also, at the same time, I love the heat, but I also visualize like the sun's good vibes just like soaking into my skin, which is actually what's happening, vitamin D and all that. And even to the point where like if my kids are just being kids and like in their feelings and not really making sense because they're kids and they feel what they feel, I'll just be like, you know what? You should go put your face in the sun. And every single time I send them outside, Jack, my 5-year-old, is one of the best examples of this, because he gets very passionate and very upset. And so I'm like, you know, you should go put your face in the sun. He goes outside and I just watch his face go from like tense, and then he puts his face in the sun and just slowly smile. Every time. He doesn't know I'm looking at him, but it's one of the cutest things. And I'm just like, yeah, put your face in the sun. Humans, put your faces in the sun.
Well, it's interesting because so a lot of people think that vitamin D comes from the sun, but really it's just the sunlight that triggers your body to create vitamin D, which is interesting. And so it's like one of the ways to get nutrients. Like when a lot of people think of nutrients only from food, but it's changed the way that I looked at things, where it's like what you choose to do with your life, with your body, is going to create nutrients. And so movement triggers your body to create nutrients as well. You get the endorphins and all of that stuff. Gazing at the sun triggers your body to make vitamin D. But I interviewed this guy who actually did basically the layman's terms research of all of the, like every research study ever done on cells. He dove into it, compiled it, and translated it so regular people could understand, and wrote a book called How Your Cells Communicate. But one of the biggest takeaways that I took from this is that gazing at a tree, whether you're inside or outside, actually stimulates your cells to regenerate. So if you're sick or if you're feeling depressed, like look at a tree. And
what about hugging a tree? Can I hug one? What does that do?
Even
I
more,
love
probably.
trees so much.
I know. And so it's just really cool. Like the other big takeaway from that interview was that like all of our cells are communicating more so than we think they are. Yeah. So by these different practices that we choose to do, including just choosing a path in life and choosing to find the joy in it in this moment, that is changing the way that your cells are going to communicate with each other. But the more that you choose, and that's what I have to remind myself often, is that when I'm feeling, because I have a lot of really highs and really low lows. And so earlier in my life, a lot of what I was trying to do was figure out how to handle ADD and depression and all of this stuff. And so now I've got a pretty good grasp on it. But so much of it is that choice. And I know a lot of us want to be like, well, depression runs in our family, which it does with me, or ADD runs in my family, or I've just always been depressed. I'm always going to be this way. That thought alone is changing the way that your cells communicate and making it more likely that that will be your experience. But when you choose, like, or decide to believe, hey, I'm going to play with the idea that I can change this situation, whether it's my mental state, whether it's how I feel in this job, how I feel with my partner, or how I feel about making the right moves to get away from the things and towards the things that are going to light me up more, that's going to change the way your cells communicate, and you're going to have a different experience doing so.
Beautiful. Can we get the title of that book once more, please?
I think it's just called How Your Cells Communicate.
Do you know the guy's name?
Dr. John Leaf, L-I-E-F-F.
Okay.
Epic.
Okay. I'm Googling it. I suggest everybody Google it. I'm so obsessed with this tree idea.
There's a Mind Love episode about it. So if you don't want to read the long scientific book, you can hear the gist in the episode.
Okay,
Yes,
I got it.
Mind
I got
Love, everyone. Go subscribe.
Secret Language of Cells, What Biological Conversations Tell Us About the Brain-Body Connection by John Leaf.
Very cool. I like this conversation because I've been playing in the perspective of everything is nourishment or not nourishment.
Yeah.
As far as what I'm looking at, what I'm talking about, what I'm thinking about, who I'm hanging out with, like every single thing, is it providing nourishment or is it depleting nourishment from my soul, from my mind, from my body, from my health? So this just totally goes along with like that whole thing that I've been playing around in. And actually I was noticing today, because I'm in the Bay Area, I'm with my family, I'm at my grandma's house, and here there's all these hills and trees and green, and you can see out really far, like vastly far. And I'm just sitting like in this new space. Like normally I can't see that far out my window in my house. And when we were talking, I just looked out, and as soon as I looked out, even for like half a second, I felt my whole body just like, like everything just like kind of released and like aligned. And I was like, damn, I need to get an office with a view like this, because this is awesome.
It's so true. I have made a ton of changes in the last few years. Well, just over time, because we go back to that reflecting. That's what my default pattern is for everything now, where I'm like, okay, this is the thing I'm doing now. How do I feel today? How did I feel yesterday? Do I feel a pattern? What triggers these things? What do I need? What do I feel like is not so good? So even just in the last year, like I gave up alcohol completely. Finally, I've kind of felt that nagging for a while. But there's science to believing in whatever, because it comes back to not choosing wrong. And I was reading something, I wish I could remember what it was, but basically, even with foods, when you're eating them, the way you feel about the food that you're eating is going to change the way that your body digests.
Oh my God, I say this all the time. I really do. This is incredible.
Yeah. And so I had a really debilitating eating disorder. I was bulimic for like over a decade. And I felt terrible about all of the food that I ate. Well, almost all of it. There'd be like one extra bite and all of a sudden it'd send me into a spiral, or I'm like, oh, this is a piece of chocolate, I can't eat this. And now I feel great about the chocolate that I eat. And like, it doesn't. And for some reason though, before it was like, I would eat the things I felt bad about and I would automatically gain a little bit of weight, or think I did, who knows, but this was my reality in my body. And also there's a lot of things happening. I was screwing with my whole digestive system. So maybe I was actually gaining weight after everything I ate. But then now I just feel differently about what I'm consuming. But I think it is my friend and I talk about this a lot. And she's like, but I just feel like I should be able to feel good about it and be fine. And I'm like, but look, you're having all these conversations and you can't get yourself to feel good about that right now. So understand that there's also a chemical compound to whatever you're engaging in. Maybe it's the screen time, maybe it's the food that you're eating. Do you feel good about it or do you feel badly about it? And if you can't get yourself, if you can't use the mindset tricks to actually just feel good about it, because maybe you're limiting your time, or maybe you're only having one of these a day, whatever it is that makes you feel good, if you still can't get there, then know that there's also things in the world that are influencing you. And so for me, there's like part of me believes that you can get to a place of like full enlightenment where you can just craft your reality, you know, and you're like, I'm going to make $1 million next week. And then you can, but I feel like you have to be on like this, you have to be like almost done with Earth school for that.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
you have like this I'm not there yet. And so sometimes I stand in the mirror and do an affirmation that doesn't do it for me. So I have to tweak it until it starts to feel real. And then,
Yeah.
and then I can do it. But for me, I know I'm in a stage where like watching too much TV, I feel depressed after it. Scrolling too much, I start to feel influenced. Like, and so I limit my environment, or I create my environment in such a way to support where I'm at in this phase so that I can then have the good feelings with whatever I'm doing. I know that was kind of a long-winded way of just saying like, know yourself again, know the things in your environment and what effect that they're having. Like if you're really trying to, if you're like, I overeat every single day at 4 p.m. And it's like, well, you have super processed foods that are designed to be addictive. Like, don't beat yourself up. That would be like me doing more crack and being like, why do I keep wanting to do more crack? You know, like understand, like stop with the crack and then work on the addiction.
Right?
Great life advice. Great life advice.
Stop with the crack.
Stop with the crack.
Pull out.
You
Pull out
can't
slow.
find your higher self when you're all wrapped up in the chemicals. So.
Yeah. So
true.
basically she's trying to have you take responsibility, but not so much responsibility that you are burdening yourself with things that aren't actually in your control or are your fault, because we are influenced by things around us, energy around us, what we put in our body, what we're looking at, who we hang out with. So it's not only you, but if you can get curious about yourself, if you can learn more about yourself, if you can follow your preferences, once you have more clarity on what those are, you're going to be golden. You're going to have a great experience. And it's just going to keep getting better and better. Hey there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts. Or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibing It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.